children. This is Mr. Moorhead coming to you with your final lesson of the French Revolution. This is for both groups, both A and B, because I've got you at the same point, and hopefully you enjoy the story. Now, the story of the end of the French Revolution actually isn't in France. It's in a place called Corsica. Okay, this is why did you had you do that map of the Mediterranean. So Corsica. So that's what we are going to talk about today. And in particular, it's a person that is in Corsica. Now, I will take you through their childhood up through the French Revolution. This person is interesting because in history, there's only two people in all of the world's history that have more books written about them. That's Alexander the Great and Jesus. So that's pretty good company. Okay. So there is a little boy here that will become, arguably, at least in modern times, the most famous person in history from a modern perspective. Overall, like he's had the third most amount of books about him. So I find that interesting. Anyway, on Corsica, you have to get a little bit of their history to understand this. Corsica was owned by an Italian city state. The people on Corsica call themselves Corsican, but they're very much Italian. They speak Italian. They would ethnically consider themselves Italian. But Corsica was owned by a city state, okay, in Italy. And the city state's having a hard time financially, and they look to sell Corsica. Well, France buys Corsica. So even to this day, Corsica is part of France. Now, this was tough for the people that lived on Corsica. Because you got to remember, one day they just woke up and now they're French citizens. They belong to France. So that would be very, very strange to just one day be part of another country. So with this said, there is a man that lives in Corsica, and in Corsica he's considered kind of wealthy. He's from an important family, and at any rate, he has a son. Now, most parents they want what's best for their kids, and he has a few sons, several daughters, and he's going to try to do what's best for his family. Now, in Corsica, some of the people thought that they could eventually become independent. He didn't see it that way. He thought that the future was French. And what he is going to do for his son is he is going to try to get him into French schools. He thinks that that is the way forward. He also kind of markets himself. He says, okay, France, I'm Corsican. I understand France. I kind of understand Corsica. I would be a good contact for you on this particular island. So this gentleman places himself in a good position in France and eventually gets a pretty decent job with the French government. Now, he will end up moving his family to France, end up moving them there. But I want to talk about this gentleman's son. At a very young age, this little kid loved to read books, okay? And he read a lot of like military history books. He would read about Alexander the Great. He would read about the big battles between Greece and Carthage and the famous general Hannibal. And he would read books at a very, very young age. We're talking about early elementary school that I studied in military college. Like that's how advanced this kid is. Not only that, but he recreates these battles. Like he has like little wooden soldiers or lead soldiers. He sets them up and he creates famous battles in history. So this kid is really like a savant. He's like a genius with the military. Now his dad is going to push him that direction. He's like, son, if this is what you like, let's go for it. So, a very long story short, eventually he is able to get his son from Corsica into a French military school. And this little boy is going to stand out like a sore thumb. Number one, he didn't originally speak French. He had to learn it before he left the island. So his French is very broken. Okay. Number two, he's very small. Okay. For his age, he is very small. but he gets into this school and he seems to excel. Okay. A lot of his classmates noticed that when they're playing games, like he tries to organize everyone. Like even in a snowball fight, he will try to organize them into ranks. And so this military thing is just up his alley. Now, this little guy will grow older, and he graduates from this military academy, and he's going to go to a more prestigious one. Okay, so at this military school, he specializes in a weapon. It's the artillery. Now, artillery has a slightly different meaning now, but essentially it's cannons. Okay, essentially cannons, and that's what he is going to specialize in. Now, as he goes through school, again, he excels. If you read very many books about this person, they will tell you that he finished at the bottom of his class. Well, he actually graduated significantly early. So for him to be at the bottom, like that would be like a sixth grader being kind of at the bottom of the eighth grade class. That's impressive if they can even make any sense in eighth grade. They're a sixth grader. So he does something similar at this military college. He really excels. He excels with the use of the cannon, but then we're going to have a problem. His dad dies. When his dad dies, he is going to go back to Corsica and try to manage the family business. And it's a mess. His dad seemed somewhat wealthy on paper. His dad owes a lot of people money. The family business has not been well run. And he kind of has to jump in and take care of this business. As all of this is going on, we kind of have the French Revolution break out. Now, this little guy, which is a teenager at this point, he has taken a leave from the military. He is trying to get his father's finances in order. He's trying to take care of things. It's extremely stressful. He gets involved in the politics of this little island. A lot of the people want him out. He's essentially kind of kicked out. And he ends up moving the family into France to help support them. And he rejoins the French military. All right, so this now teenage, early 20s, somewhere in that range, young man has had a little bit of stress there in that he's lost his dad. He's got the stress of he's now having to take care of this family and their finances are horrible. And now he is plopped right into the French Revolution. So down here in the southern part of France, we're going to have the British and Spanish actually land, and then they will form a base here. Okay. This is bad news for France because I told you initially they had a lot of success, but they're kind of stuck over here in Italy fighting Austria. There's Austria up there. All right. We have pressure coming from Prussia. And now we have the British and Spanish that have troops and a base inside of France. This is going to allow them to move more troops and supplies and to dig further into France. This is bad news. So this young man, he's in charge of cannons. He's going to be sent to fight the British. Now, the British have fortified a city. So you can think of the word fort. And the French attack this city. They attack it head on and they are slaughtered. They attack it again head on. And what I mean is like they go straight toward the city and they're getting picked apart. So you have this young man who's in charge of the cannons, and he tells his commanding officers, I'm the guy that's in charge of the cannons, but you guys are attacking the city incorrectly. It's not how you attack it. And they kind of looked at him and were like, this is a young man. Like, we have a ton of military experience. What are you talking about? And he said, what is the strength of the British? And most people know the strength of the British is the Navy. He says, you want to attack their Navy. You don't want to attack that base, attack their Navy. And the captains are like, hey, this is, excuse me, this is great news, Sherlock, but how are we going to attack their Navy? We don't have any boats. And he's like, no, here's what you do. You attack the mountains nearby, put my cannons up into those mountains. They'll be able to fire on the ships. The people in the fortified city will be so frightened that their ships are going to be destroyed and they'll be stranded, that they'll get on the ships and leave. And they give it a try. This will be known as the Battle of Toulon. So this young man is able to get his cannons up to a high position. He spreads the cannons out and he begins sinking the British Navy. All right. This guy is defeating a navy and he has no boats. That's absolutely amazing. The British and the Spanish are forced to leave, and this Battle of Toulon is won by this young man and his cannons. Very, very impressed. Shortly after this, we are going to have the end of the Reign of Terror, and we have this new government called the Directory. People are fed up with the Jacobins who have been executed. They're fed up with the Directory, the National Assembly. A large number of people at this point now want a king back. They remember when they had a king and things weren't as bad as they are now. So we're going to have a large group of people try to overthrow the Directory. They're bearing down on them. A large group of people are going to come into the government and say, all right, Directory, we're done. We're replacing you with a king. We'll find one of Louis's relatives. The Directory sends out a message. Can someone help us? Can somebody help us? And sure enough, the only person around was this young man. This young man marched his cannons in front of where the Directory would have been, or at least close by, I should say. And here comes this mass riot of people. They are going to overthrow the Directory. And he gives a warning. He says, I will open fire if you come any further near the Directory. The people keep moving. Now, there's a special way he's going to use his cannons. There's two ways you can use a cannon back then. One, you can use it for kind of long distance, like this guy used it to hit ships. But the other way that you can use it is you put like a glass inside of the cannon, a canister, and you put all types of little bits of metal in it. Now, this won't fire as far, but it yields a big spread. So if it's a cannonball, it kind of goes straight. If it's this canister, like it breaks apart like this. Okay, you can see me up there in the screen. And it will give a wide like shot and very, very ferocious, powerful shot. It just doesn't go very far. Now, this will send whatever was in that canister, like in the glass, this will send it flying, and it will send it out, and it will be red hot. So he gives another warning to these folks. He puts this in there. Then they keep coming, and he fires the cannons. You immediately see a whole bunch of people fall all of a sudden. And they're being hit with these little bits of metal coming out of the cannon. And it's kind of crazy because, like, if it hits right here in your jaw, like it's so hot, like it'll burn through and just comes out. So you had little bits of metal go inside of people and it like burns all the way through their body. So this is extremely devastating to this group of folks. And they immediately call off the attack and the overthrow of the Directory, and the Directory is saved. The Directory will tell this guy, oh my gosh, that was wonderful. We're going to promote you. This man's name is Napoleon. And again, he becomes the third most written about person in history. The Directory is actually going to send him into Italy to battle Austria. And it's been a bit of a stalemate there. He goes in, he whips the army into shape, and he's actually able to defeat Austria. He will come back to the Directory and he says, all right, I've knocked Austria out. We've knocked the British and the Spanish out of the bottom, but I know how to permanently defeat the British. The way that you defeat the British is not by attacking Great Britain. You attack Egypt down here. Okay, see Egypt? He says British supplies always come through Egypt. They go through Asia, and then they come up through here. And he says, if you can attack this area, Great Britain will have no more supplies. So sure enough, the Directory allows him to attack Egypt. He fights against Egypt, the British and the joint Egyptian forces. Sure enough, Napoleon is able to take this over. Now, in the meantime, the British will bring in their navy. It traps the French here. And we are going to have Napoleon escape. He will leave on a boat, And with the help of his brother, actually, he arrives back into France. He is very popular at this point. He has defeated Austria. He put up a big fight against the British. Things are very unstable in France. And his brother, Napoleon's brother, has helped convince him that, hey, dude, you can take this over and just rule if you would. And Napoleon agrees to this. Napoleon will go into the directory. He will say, guys, you did a great job with the French Revolution, but I am here. I am taking over, and you guys are dismissed. Sure enough, the directory kind of disbands. Napoleon is in charge, and he will eventually be named Emperor of France. Now, we started with a king and we ended with an emperor. And in between those two periods, we're going to have tens of thousands of people dead. So the French Revolution ends when Napoleon arrives back in France, and they call it a coup d'etat. He takes over the government. The directory is gone. Napoleon is here, and he is now ruling France. Now, next week, I'm going to give you some more stories about Napoleon. I want to tell you more about Napoleon in Egypt, and hopefully, I will be able to tell you more about Napoleon as a ruler. And his battles are just starting because he's going to have a lot more war after this. So, the French Revolution is over, guys, and it's over because Napoleon took over the government. All right, I hope you enjoyed the story, and we'll be getting a lot more about Napoleon in the future. Bye for now, little children.